Hi guys, welcome to Safe Formula. I'm Boo and forget the hype and Honda just broken the 2026 Robo. Let's have a proper look at the tectonic shift currently happening at Silverstone, because what we're witnessing with the reveal of the Honda AMR26H and Adrian Newey's AMR26 isn't just a new car launch. It's a total reimagining of how a Formula One team operates. For years, Aston Martin has been the best of the rest. A team that punched above its weight but always seemed to be borrowing someone else's homework. Now they've brought in the ultimate professor in Newey and a works engine partner in Honda that has nothing left to prove but everything to lose. This 2026 project is an all-in gamble on the most complex set of regulations the sport has ever seen. And the technical breadcrumbs we're finding suggest that Newey is building something that might just break the simulation software before it even hits the track. The heart of this beast is the Honda AMR26H power unit, and we need to talk about the sheer audacity of its design. The 2026 regulations demand a 50% power split between the internal combustion engine and the electrical system, which sounds simple enough on paper until you realize the MGUK is being boosted from 120 W to a massive 350 W. That is a 1% increase in electrical harvesting and deployment. Hearing this engine on the dyno is a haunting experience. The traditional V6 scream is now layered with a high-frequency electrical whine that sounds more like a jet turbine than a racing car. It's a literal powerhouse that generates nearly 470 horsepower from the battery alone. And the cooling requirements for that much juice are why the AMR26 side pods look unlike anything we've seen on the grid so far. Koji Watanabe's admission that not everything is going well with the engine's development is, in my opinion, the most refreshing bit of honesty we've had from a manufacturer in a decade. In the world of high-stakes engineering, struggling usually means you're pushing the absolute boundaries of physics. Honda is currently locked in a battle with the FIA over the 16:1 compression ratio limit. There is a very specific technical intrigue regarding how this ratio is measured, specifically whether it's at ambient intake temperature or at peak operating pressure. If Honda and their fuel partner Aramco can exploit a loophole here, they could effectively run a higher virtual compression ratio, giving them a thermal efficiency edge that would make their rivals' IC units look like steam engines. The AMR26 chassis itself is the first true Newey Aston Martin, and the level of obsession he's putting into the suspension is frankly terrifying for the rest of the pit lane. Reports suggest Newey delayed the final sign-off on the suspension geometry until the absolute last millisecond, likely causing several nervous breakdowns in the manufacturing department. Why? Because in 2026, the car's aerodynamic platform is no longer static. With active aerodynamics, wings that flip between high downforce Z mode and low drag X mode, the car's center of pressure will migrate violently. Newey knows that if the suspension doesn't mechanically compensate for these shifts, the car will become an undrivable pogo stick the moment the driver opens the DRS. The choice of suspension is the silver bullet of the 2026 era. While Red Bull and Audi seem to be leaning towards a conventional double push rod setup to clear space for the bulky 2026 cooling ducts, Newey has been agonizing over the trade-off between mechanical grip and aerodynamic transparency. In my view, he's likely looking for a third way, a bespoke linkage system that keeps the floor at a perfectly constant ride height regardless of the aero load. If he achieves this, the AMR26 will be able to run its floor lower than the competition without stalling the diffuser, which in a ground effect heavy era is worth more than any engine upgrade could ever provide. We have to address the 24-hour rule Newey brought with him from Milton Keynes. It's a beautifully human approach to a digital problem. He sits on every radical idea for a day, critiquing it until it either fails or proves it belongs on the car. This is why the AMR26 suspension was finalized so late, in an age where every other team trusts the CFD, computational fluid dynamics. Implicitly, New still trusts his intuition and his drawing board. He's looking for the passive mechanical solution to an active aerodynamic problem. And that extra 24 hours of thought might be the reason the AMR26 handles like a dream while others are fighting snap over steer. The arrival of Enrico Cowell from Ferrari adds a fascinating layer of human drama to the engineering office. Cowell was the man who kept Ferrari committed to the rear pull rod suspension long after everyone else had switched to push rod. Seeing him work alongside Newey, a man who loves to reinvent the wheel, is going to be either a masterclass in collaboration or a total clash of egos. However, with the 30 cadres weight reduction mandate for 2026, every component has to be doubled up in its function. The suspension isn't just there for grip anymore. It has to be part of the aero structure, and a Cowell's experience in high mechanical grip environments might be exactly what Newey needs to ground his more radical aero concepts. Let's talk statistics for a moment, because the 2026 car is a diet version of the current machinery. We're looking at a 10 Cebras narrower car and a shorter wheelbase of 300 mm. This makes the car inherently more nervous and flickable. If the suspension isn't perfectly harmonized with the Honda power unit's torque delivery, the drivers are going to be in for a very busy afternoon. New's obsession with platform stability is aimed at giving the driver the confidence to throw the car into a corner, knowing that the active aero and the mechanical grip won't suddenly disagree with each other halfway through the apex. I found Newey's comments about Aston Martin's weak simulation tools to be a massive wake-up call. For a team with a brand new campus, the fact that their simulator wasn't correlating with on-track reality is a huge yikes moment. But look at how they've responded. Hiring Giles Wood from Apple and the legendary Marco Finanello, they aren't just fixing the software, they are rebuilding the team's digital architecture. In my opinion, this is the invisible work that will decide the 2026 championship. If Finanella can give Newey a digital twin that actually behaves like the real car, the development rate of the AMR26 will be exponential compared to a team still guessing at their data. The 100% sustainable fuel partnership with Aramco is the unsung hero of this project. These fuels don't burn like the high-octane petrol we're used to. They have different energy densities and combustion speeds. Honda's RA626H is being tuned specifically for this chemical cocktail. If they get the NOx sensor data wrong, the engine could literally blow its own cylinder heads off. The synergy between the chemists in Saudi Arabia and the engineers in Sakura is a works advantage that simply cannot be understated. They are tailoring the engine to the fuel, which allows for a much more aggressive ignition map than a customer team would ever dare to run. Packaging is another area where Newey is likely outclassing the field. With a 350 kW and MGUK, the battery and inverter are massive. Most teams will be forced to bloat their side pods to accommodate the cooling for these units. However, Newey's AMR26 concept suggests he's using internalized aero, using the air flowing through the radiators to actually generate downforce as it exits the rear of the car. It's a high-risk strategy because if the engine runs 5 degrees too hot, you lose aero performance. But if anyone can make a radiator behave like a wing, it's Adrian. The derating phenomenon is going to be the biggest talking point of 2026. Because the electrical deployment is so massive, cars will run out of battery power halfway down long straights, causing them to suddenly lose nearly 470 horsepower. This is where Newey's suspension becomes a performance factor. If the AMR26 can carry 5% more speed through the final corner because of its superior mechanical platform, it won't need to deploy as much burst energy to get back to top speed. In 2026, the car that saves the most energy in the corners will be the one that has the longest legs on the straights. I genuinely believe the works relationship with Honda is the final piece of the puzzle Lawrence Stroll has been building. At Red Bull, Honda was a partner, but at Aston they are an extension of the team. This allows for bespoke packaging of the oil tanks, the pleum, and the exhaust headers. Every millimeter of space saved around the engine is a millimeter Newey can use for a more aggressive diffuser. It's an integrated approach that Mercedes used to dominate 2014. And seeing Andy Cowell, the architect of that Mercedes dominance, now at Aston as Chief Strategy Officer, tells you everything you need to know about their ambitions. The technical loophole regarding compression ratios is a battleground I'm watching very closely. If Honda can prove to the FIA that their interpretation of the 16C1 limit is the correct one, it could force every other manufacturer to redesign their piston crowns mid-season. Andy Cowell's presence here is vital. He knows how to read between the lines of the technical regulations better than anyone. He and Newey are likely searching for that one double diffuser style advantage that defines a generation. If they found it in the combustion chamber of the RA626, the 2026 season could be over before it begins. Let's not forget the human cost of this development. The timeline is absolutely brutal. With the Barcelona test starting January 26th, the manufacturing team at Silverstone is essentially living in the factory. Newey's late sign-off on the suspension means they are working with a window that is nearly 20% shorter than a standard build cycle. But that's the price of perfection. I'd rather have a car that's a week late and a second faster than one that's on time and stuck in the midfield. The atmosphere at the factory is reportedly a mix of pure adrenaline and absolute exhaustion, which is exactly how championship-winning cars are born. The simulation guru Marco Fanel's role is to ensure that when Lance Stroll and his teammate hit the track, the car feels exactly as it did in the virtual world. If there is a 0% correlation, as Newey feared, the team is flying blind. By bringing in the Shoei-era experts, Aston Martin is trying to combine old-school feel with modern data processing. It's an authentic human approach to a sport that has become increasingly sterile and over-reliant on algorithms. Newey still wants a car that a human can drive on the ragged edge, not just a car that looks good on a spreadsheet. The stats regarding the weight reduction are also a major hurdle. Dropping 30 kg from a car that is already at the limit of lightness requires exotic materials and radical engineering. Every bolt, every bracket, and every suspension arm on the AMR26 has been scrutinized under NEBOVI's 24-hour rule. This lightness is essential because the 2026 power units are heavier due to the increased battery size. If Aston can hit the minimum weight limit while others are over, they'll have a built-in advantage of roughly 0.3 seconds per lap just from mass alone. Active aerodynamics, the X mode and Z mode will be the ultimate test of Newey suspension geometry. When the wings move, the car's balance shifts. If the suspension isn't perfectly calibrated to handle that sudden change in load, the car will bottom out or lose front-end bite. Newey is reportedly working on a passive HIV damper system that can counteract these shifts without the need for complex heavy electronics. It's a mechanical solution to a digital problem, and it's exactly why he's considered the greatest designer in the history of the sport. As we look toward the February 9th launch, the sense of curiosity is at an all-time high. We're not just waiting for a livery, we're waiting to see if Newey has found the hidden performance in the 2026 regs. The Honda RA626H is a masterpiece of electrical engineering, and the AMR26 is the canvas Newey is using to prove he's still the master. My opinion, Aston Martin is no longer just a project. With Newey, Cowell and Honda, they have the technical holy trinity required to topple Red Bull and Ferrari. I think the 2026 season isn't just a new set of rules. It's a test of who can best manage the chaos of 5350 power and active aero. Adrian's agony over a suspension choice might seem like a small detail, but it is the foundation upon which the entire AMR26 is built. If he's right, and the suspension provides the stability the aero needs, the Honda R626H will be able to unleash its 350 Ws of fury without compromise. It's a high-stakes, high-tech gamble that has world champion written all over it. Blime me, if this works, the rest of the grid isn't just in trouble.